Hi, my love. Welcome to the Gemma Hanley podcast. My name is Gemma. I'm your host. This is the space where I have honest conversations about overcoming anxiety and overwhelm so that you can calm your nervous system and feel really confident and happy and calm from within yourself. Along the way, I share my own stories of holistically healing 23 years of anxiety and depression myself. And so if you're a woman seeking answers to perfectionism, people-pleasing, burnout, resistance, you may love, you're in the right place. Let's do it. Let's begin. And before we begin, I want to pay my respects and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land upon which I am recording from, which is the Gubbi Gubbi tribe. And I want to extend that acknowledgement to their elders, past, present, and emerging, as well as anybody of Indigenous or Torres Strait Islander heritage watching this replay. Hey, gorgeous woman, and welcome back to the Gemma Hanley podcast. It is so good to be hitting record. This episode, this conversation that I'm bringing you, I actually sat down and it was just this stream of expression that was coming through me, and I was writing it out as an email to my mailing list because that's typically the style I share from on my mailing list with the women on there. Is I'm sharing behind the scenes of my life, something I'm going through, something I'm witnessing. Sometimes it'll be a conversation that I've overheard at a cafe, and I break down my current growth or my current healing or what I'm observing, as I'm people watching, and I teach something from that. And so I sat down this morning and I started writing this on the topic of, me experiencing comparison recently as an email, and it just kept getting longer and longer and longer, but it was really important stuff. And I had a different plan for this week's podcast episode. And all of a sudden I was like, I think this is what I need to record for the podcast this week. So postponed what we were going to be talking about and bringing this conversation front and center. And something I am so freaking excited about in bringing you this conversation of how I've been experiencing comparison is to show you how compassionate, how patient, how fucking loving we can be with ourselves, to ourselves, in the relationship with ourselves when we're experiencing something that doesn't feel good, right? It's often that I don't get me out of this. And how do I get rid of this? And how do I stop feeling like this? And how do I stop thinking about this? And how do I get back to feeling good? And, how do I get back to feeling like there's this spring in my step and things are just flowing? And so, yeah, it's always really fun to bring it as a real-time life experience that I've, just completed navigating or come out the other side of. Because I feel like it does such a great job at telling the story of how we can be that way towards ourselves, how we can show ourselves patience and compassion when the truth is maybe we don't like who we're being or how we're expressing or how we're showing up in a certain moment, or, maybe it's a certain patch or season it's been going on for a while. Let's get into it. So, as some of you might know, I started working with a new coach in January in the space of my business. So it's business coaching. And this coach, this woman, is phenomenal. My experience of working with coaches is that, which have been plentiful, by the way, in all different areas of my life. I've worked with coaches, in the space of my physical health, anxiety, depression, sex, relationships, business, money, all of those 6 key areas really that I talk to you about and work with my clients on. And my experience has been that, depending on what my own personal evolution and growth is looking like, and also part of that is my readiness to create here's a better way of saying this. whenever I engage a coach, I'm pretty clear on, okay, is this something I just want to become more refined at and make some tweaks around and understand more deeply? And there's an existing skill set here, and I really want to, just develop that and refine that a little bit more. Or is this a stage of my life and a goal that I'm going after that is like the complete next building block to some part of my life that is going to feel like starting from scratch with something, right? And every couple of years, I have found in business, I go through that experience where a building block of whether that is, my marketing message or systems that are in place or the quality of my delivery as a coach, that block and that focus of what I've been working on is complete. Like it can't be made any better. What is actually going to take my business and my coaching to the next level is looking at what's the next actual different block that needs to come in here. And just got a little bit of orange juice in my tooth, I think. Love my OJ with pulp. Double pulp, actually. My brother-in-law finds that hilarious. He's like, now I have to fucking strain the juice before I drink it. I enjoy it. Anyway, bit of a tangent. So this instance of engaging and hiring this coach that I've been working with in my business so far this year, and I've engaged for at least this entire year, has very much been a new building block. Like, we're going to a whole new level of sophistication and how I view this key area of my life that is business. And so some of what came up quite immediately as I began working with this coach and understanding her philosophy and her structures and beliefs around business and business growth was, some of these thoughts that came up for me was like, oh my gosh, my business is like a fucking hobby compared to her business. Yeah. Like it's so basic and it's so baby and it's so unsophisticated. It's like a hobby, right? My podcast episodes and like my content, it's like they've been written by a child compared to hers. Yeah, it's like they've been written by an infant that's just learning to walk. Something else that came up was it is going to be years before I have a business anywhere near as sophisticated and successful as hers, right? And I have so many measures of what success actually means. So it was based on that measure. Yeah. Those measures, rather. And before I go any further, because they're the main examples that came up around comparison for me. So me comparing myself to my current coach. One of the first things I actually want to say, and I do not think this is talked about enough. Yeah. In fact, I don't know that I really hear it at all. Is that every single one of those things is fucking true. It's actually true, right? Like it's actually true that if we put businesses on a scale of, like a part-time interest versus like a dedicated hobby versus this, whatever on a scale, that in comparison, my business is at a level that is like a dedicated hobby. In a lot of instances, the content that I am producing and creating is at like a child level compared to the potential of what there is for me to grow into, right? And what she's producing. And it literally will be years. It will be years before I have a business that I would say is in the same category as hers, if I ever do, because I also don't even know if I want that, right? And so all of these things are true. And I might even just pause here for a minute. Like, I want you to actually reflect on where I might be going here before I do. Just give you like a 5-second pause here. All of these things are true, and they only become problematic or lead me into that experience of comparison when I make them mean something about myself. So when I make them mean, oh, I'm not as intelligent, or I make them mean, oh, I'm less than, or I make them mean, oh, I should have made different choices in the past and I'd be further ahead by now. Or what was the other one that just popped up that I wanted to share? Oh, or if I make it mean like it's going to take a long time. So that's, and buying into the overwhelm around that. And so when I am only focusing on like the end goal of where I want to be and not looking at what is actually possible for me in the day-to-day, week to week right now. Yeah. So if I focus on the end goal only and how far away it seems, then I am like 2 feet in, stimulating and creating overwhelm in this whole experience for myself. So I think it's really useful at times. You know, of course, there will be times too where we're comparing ourselves and it's not actually true or factual, but there's truth and there's facts in these comparisons that I was experiencing. And so that was important for me to be like, yeah, cool story, babe. And this doesn't actually have to mean anything other than this is a phenomenal leader I'm exposed to with incredible skills that I can leverage. And I have access to everything I need to be on my way and to be little by little moving the needle forward. Right. And that's been really powerful for me to realize. And I'm going to talk about, you know, as we move through this conversation, I'm also going to talk about in a more specific way what was actually coming up and being triggered in my nervous system. And then comparison was just like the symptom or the flow-on effect of what was coming up, right? But it's just such a perfect example of that saying or that quote, another level, another devil. Yeah, another level, another devil, where we step out of our comfort zone, we go all in on a meaningful goal. And, you know, I think it is undeniable that when we financially invest in ourselves or in a project, that there's some tangible evidence there that we're fully leaned in. We've stepped over the line of like, will I or won't I, with 2 feet. Yeah. To the will. I will do, I want to do this. I'm claiming this. I'm declaring this out loud. This is something I want for myself. Yeah. And that when we do that, so we're like, yes, I want the other, I want the next level. I want to go there. It's so true for me. It feels really painful that I don't have it. I feel like there's this untapped potential in me. I want that. I want the next level. And then with that next level, the next inverted commas, of course, devil appears. Yeah. So things like comparison, fear, questioning whether I'm good enough starts coming to the surface, right? And it's really easy to fall into patterns of believing, oh, and this is some of what, you know, I've been leaning into. This is really fucking hard. Like, this is so hard. Is this possible for me? How much do I actually want this? Right. So we start the second guessing. Maybe there's like some bitterness or some jealousy coming up, and that can be so subtle and so sneaky as well. Right. One of the ways this can show up that I've seen show up at different stages in business for me is like holding other people to standards of perfectionism so that I feel better when I'm noticing that I'm a beginner at something, or I'm awkward at something, or I don't feel like I have something completely figured out yet. And it's not that I'm actually going to a person and saying to them, this needs to be improved, or this isn't good enough, or look where you made this mistake, right? these conversations could actually just be happening in our head where we're judging other people, right? Or we're like critiquing other people because what's happening inwardly with ourselves is being reflected outwardly. Yeah, because we're judging ourselves, that lens of judgment is then being projected onto other people too. And what typically happens is we start blaming things outside of ourselves as well, like coming up with these reasons and excuses that again make us feel a little bit better. Not much. Yeah, I'm not saying you feel good, but it's like, oh, well, if I just had this, then I could do that. Or it's probably a bit easier for them because of this. Yeah, it's going to take me longer. So they're just like these little comforts that allow me to feel less vulnerable, less exposed, less like I don't have any fucking idea what I'm doing. Yeah. But also the other end of the scale can happen, right? Where we put the other person, so in this instance, it would have looked like me putting my coach on a pedestal, yeah, or like a healing modality or a technique on a pedestal, like worshiping it almost, right? And to the point where you lose yourself, like you lose your sense of self, you lose your own intuitive attunement to what's right for you, what feels good, what feels off, and you hand your power over. Yeah. And you believe that either the modality, like the healing modality or technique, or the coach or the other person has your answers for you. Because it's another version of like, oh, well, I'm feeling really uncomfortable. I'm feeling really uncertain. Let me just hand that over so I don't have to deal with that. And underneath the surface of that sometimes is like, well, if I'm going all in on this thing, then it's not my fault if it doesn't work. Or if I'm giving the expert the power to make these choices on my behalf and it doesn't work, well, then, I'll have somebody else to blame or it won't completely be my own fault, which comes from this inability to love ourselves if we make decisions that don't work out how we wanted them to, or if we feel disappointed, or if we feel shame and embarrassment about a choice that we've made that retrospectively we wouldn't. It's easier to hide behind a decision that you have handed over to someone else than take complete ownership of it yourself. Yeah. And to actually feel the emotions around that so that you'd be able to release it. Or maybe also what happens in this scenario with comparison, with fear, with second guessing whether you're good enough, whether it's possible for you, is trying to do everything perfect and like real, wanting to be like the A+ student, right? And become like the favorite person, yeah, or the best at it. You're the best at the thing. And so then, if you're not making progress or if you're not getting the results that you want, it's like, well, I did it perfectly, so it can't be me. It can't be about me, right? When in actual fact, sometimes perfectionism is actually the problem and the pattern to be worked on. So of course that's not going to facilitate you or help you to get the results that you want. So these are some of the ways or the patterns that we can see coming up. And self-preservation, ego is another word for that, but like self-preservation, wanting to keep ourselves safe, wanting to feel that we're right, wanting to feel that we are getting it perfect, will have us unable to see and be honest about these patterns that are rolling out, because it will look different for all of us. Yeah. Here's what I see a lot of women, like here's what I see almost all women do when they're experiencing comparison or feeling less than, or maybe feeling threatened in knowing who they are or where they stand, or that they're important, that they're significant, that they're really good at something. This is the approach, or like the way I see most women try and solve that experience. Yeah.
which is that they look at their current day life. Yeah, so the things that are happening in their current day life, they look outwardly to that and they believe they're going to find the problem that is stimulating comparison or jealousy or feeling less than or self-doubt. They think they're going to find that in their current day life. Yeah. And some of what this might look like is, and I'll use the example of myself, what could have come up. These things didn't, but what could have. Is they could tell the story of like, oh, like maybe I've hired the wrong coach or chosen the wrong healing modality. Maybe I've just made a decision that wasn't the right one for me. Right. And there'll probably be some belief of, I can't trust myself to make good decisions. Maybe they'll start buying into this idea of, well, like maybe it's not the right time for me to be pursuing this goal. And off the back of that, they might even start to think, well, maybe actually there's more ducks I need to have in a row. Yeah, there's more conditions that need to be perfected before I'm going to be able to progress this goal. Oh my gosh, that's it. I have to do this, this, and this, and I have to have this, this, and this, and then I'll be ready to do this work to progress this goal in my life, right? Whether it's leaning into a different way of dating, whether it's starting a business, whether it's making a career change, whether it's setting new boundaries in a relationship that may cause that relationship to need to end or close, right? And it's uncomfortable. And so in this instance, a woman is basically convincing herself that a distraction, so something in a different direction or with a different focus, is actually a worthy use of her time and energy instead of sticking to the real goal that she actually not so long earlier, like not so much earlier before, had felt a lot of clarity around and identified as like, this is my highest priority. This is the thing that needs to shift and change in my life, right? But then when all of this like wounding or, shadows, but like really um, past trauma is what it is, past significant emotional events, memories that haven't been processed fully yet, when they start to surface because we're stepping out of our comfort zone, it's fucking uncomfortable. Yeah. If you're creating a significant change in your life, and what I mean by that is if you were to say to yourself, oh my gosh, if I was to have this goal, my life would look significantly different, right? So go back to using myself as an example. If I was to create this next building block in my business, my life would look significantly different. Yeah. I'd have more teams supporting me in my business. I would be supporting more women in my programs. Yeah. There would be more ease and flow and, travel and an abundance of other decisions available to me from a space of building financial growth and building financial wealth, right? Like my life would look significantly different based on that. I'd have, the team support to be able to create more different ways to support and lead women, right? And so it's where it's really like, as I'm speaking about that, what I'm feeling inside is like, oh my gosh, the conversations I would be having daily would be so different because I'd be talking about, potentially products or offerings that don't even exist right now. And I'd be talking about them to other women who more women I've been able to bring into my business and empower in their zone of genius and contribute to their lives in that way. Yeah. There would be so much more automation and systems in my business so that I feel more free and I have more, there's more abundance in time of the different things I can experience in my day, right? There's more safety in my nervous system because there's more stability and certainty in how I'm supporting myself and how I'm building my own lifestyle, right? And so that's what I want you to check too, because that's how I classify a significant change in your life, is that, when you're walking out the door in the morning, where currently it's like you feel like you're dragging yourself and it's like, oh gosh, like, I've got to get this done today and I've got to get this done today and then I've got to rush there and I don't feel like I have enough time, versus you might be like literally like skipping out the door, um, laughing at something or humming the song that you've been dancing along to in the shower while you're getting ready to leave the house that morning. And that's just like your normal way of being, right? Like that's a significant difference. And so just trying to circle back now, I've gone off on this big tangent, but when the difference you're looking at creating in your life is significant, there's going to be times where you want to run away from that, where you wish you could just like click a button and have it because it's feeling really hard and you're questioning, is this possible for me? And you're literally wondering, oh, maybe I needed more ducks in a row. Maybe I needed to go and do this other thing first, right? And so one of the things that I have my clients complete when they first start working with me inside Reveal and Rise is a document called Clarifying Your Why. And the reason I have them complete this before we start coaching, or like in the first week of starting coaching, is most of the time that's when a woman's feeling like excited, they're feeling really hopeful, they're feeling like they've got a plan, and they've got these sparks of belief within them that this is possible for me, right? And in order for us to have them arrive to a place where it is part of their reality, we have to look at, well, like what is stopping that from being possible to you? Why do you need to be here in this coaching space? Why do you need this support? Why has everything you've already tried not worked for you so far? And when we look at that stuff, it's not something that I hear a lot of women, talk about as the peak of enjoyment or the peak of excitement and fun, right? Some of you listening to this, as I've talked through, like, the experience that I had around comparison, that might have brought to the surface for you, something that, or some space in your life that comparison is alive for you right now. Excuse me. Maybe it's, in a friendship where you really love, the relationship you have with a soul sister, but you also feel triggered by her because, she's more expressed, or she's more progressed, or she's more confident in a certain area of life that you're not, and it triggers you. Maybe it is you're in a relationship and you compare yourself to your partner's ex-girlfriend. Maybe it's a family member that you're comparing yourself to. Maybe it's a work colleague, yeah, who's in a similar role to you, or maybe it feels like they more easily receive credit or recognition. These are some of the ways comparison can surface. And so when that happens, it's not necessarily a really fun time to look at that. And so when we've captured the truth of like, this is what I want to work on, this goal is so important to me, this is the thing I want more than anything right now, this is what I'm here to work on, before we start going into looking at like, what are those hurdles, what are those blocks, then the honesty of where you want to go and what the most important goal is has been captured. And so we get to return to that and remind ourselves, oh, okay, this is allowed to feel hard. Yeah. If it was easy, I wouldn't need to be in this coaching space, right? If it was easy, I would have figured it out by now on my own. And that doesn't change the fact that this goal that I'm going after is something I actually still really want and is really important to me. And I can acknowledge that, maybe I'm numbing some stuff. Maybe the fear is so overwhelming that I'm feeling paralyzed. Maybe I'm fawning and trying to be perfect at everything, which means I'm not progressing anything because I can't do anything perfect when I'm the learner and the beginner. Like, I'm not going to get it right the first time. And so if I have to go into that fawning and get things perfect and be really pleasing and get things right, I can't do anything because I'm not going to get it right the first time I do it. Yeah. Or maybe it sent you into that flight mode of like, oh, I've got to get out of here. Let me create all of these other things, all of these spot fires, or all of these other reasons and excuses of like where my attention has to go otherwise. Yeah. So that's a summary of what I see most women doing as their best guess, their best intention. Yeah, like their intentions are in the right place of how to solve this feeling of comparison. Oh, is this possible for me? I don't feel like it is. Maybe there's something wrong with me. I don't think I'm good enough. Should I just give up? Yeah. And I want to contrast that now with what I do and what I guide my clients and teach my clients to do as well. And so essentially, how I responded to this feeling of fuck, like I can see when I observe my thoughts and when I observe my nervous system, I can see I'm going into this comparison mode and I'm going into this feeling of questioning, am I good enough to do this? Is this possible for me? And so this is how I respond to it. How I respond to it is instead of, and this in the past, I used to do it too, but instead of believing that the problem and the solution, like the problem is in my current day life. Yeah, that it's the coach or it's the timing or that it's the wrong focus or that I need something else to be in place before I can move forward. Instead of going into all of that, what I know is that whilst my current day life is stimulating a reaction in my nervous system, yeah, that's switching on that fight, flight, freeze, fawn response. So in this case, engaging this coach, seeing where her business is at and what she's created, comparing myself and my business to that, and feeling like, holy fuck, this is overwhelming. Yeah. That was the current day life event that stimulated my nervous system, right? And really sent me into probably like a combination of all of those responses except fight. I wouldn't say necessarily fight. I'd say more flight, but probably mostly freeze and fawn. Yeah. What I know is that reaction is being stimulated by an unresolved memory or trauma from my past where I felt unsafe or unloved. And that every year, so long as I continue to be honest and truthful about what would mean the most to me as part of my life vision and my goals, and I actually step into that, more and more and more healing is going to become available to me. Yeah. Because every time I step into a goal or part of my life vision that is very fucking true and aligned and authentic and real for me, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I'm going into a territory where I'm saying, I'm going to create this thing that in my entire life, I've never created before. I've never done it before. Yeah. It's stepping into the unknown. It's stepping into uncertain territory. And when we do that, without realizing it, because it's stored at a subconscious level, anytime we experience something that is, anytime we experience something new and that is unknown and we're not certain about it, yeah, that is triggering those past significant emotional events or the past memory or the past trauma. And we're experiencing the trigger in our current day life. But what it's actually doing is it's our nervous system reliving it from the past. Yeah. So I feel like I just want to summarize that. Our current day life. So my current day life is stimulating a reaction in my nervous system that fits into the category of a stress response, a fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Yeah. What I know is it's not the current day stimulus that is triggering that. It's an unresolved memory or trauma from the past. I don't necessarily know what that is yet, but it typically always fits into the category of a time where me or anybody with a nervous system has felt unsafe or unloved. Yeah. And because we can't literally, intellectually draw the line in that moment or name, oh, it was when I was 4 years old and I, was at the park and my mum was with her mum friends, like having a conversation, and we were playing chasey and everybody ganged up on me and I was the one that was just made it every time. Yeah. I just made that up. But it's like a classic example of where some of this stuff can come from, right? That's stored at a subconscious level. So intellectually, we can't draw the line to it when we are an adult. I'm 36 years old and I'm comparing my business to another business and making that mean that I could have made better choices or maybe I'm not good enough. Yeah. However, something about that comparison in my 36-year-old life is triggering the past memory and my nervous system is reliving it. And this is why we have experiences, my love, of feeling like a reaction is like wildly disproportionate. So someone might say something, and one of the women brought this to the Reveal and Rise coaching call last week. Someone sent her some unsolicited advice, meaning like she didn't ask for an opinion, and someone sent her some information that they, from a loving place, thought might be really useful for her, right? And she really beautifully and openly and vulnerably was like, it really pissed me off. And like, it took me everything to not just like punch in this text response and hit send. Like, where did that come from? And what is that about? Yeah. And I'm sure we've also all been on the receiving end of like an explosive response to something where we're like, whoa, like, what? Like, where did that come from? And like, why are they reacting in that way? And it's really easy for us to be like, are they like crazy? What's wrong with them? Instead of being able to zoom out and realize, okay, there's a whole context of what might be happening in their life around this. And in all of that context, there might be multiple stimuluses to subconscious memories and unprocessed traumas that are being activated and being projected and like exploding out into the current day world. Yeah. And so it could be something as subtle as a tone of voice. It could be something as subtle as a word. I think I've told the story before, in one of my past relationships, my partner was sitting on the couch and he really wanted some watermelon. And I was like, don't get up. Like, I want to do this. Like, I'll cut you up some watermelon. And I said something to him like, yeah, I want to do like, let me do this favor for you. Yeah. Or can you do me a favor and let me know how you like it chopped up? Or I want to do this. I was being playful. I want to do this favor perfectly for you. Let me know how you like it chopped up. And in that moment, he had this really big reaction of like, well, don't do it for me if it's a favor, right? Because in the past for him, he'd felt trapped and manipulated and controlled if someone had done a favor for him and then they expected something back in return. And so in that instance, his nervous system reaction actually had zero to do with what was actually happening, right? But a lot of the time, individuals aren't aware of that. And they really do think that it's the current day event and that person shouldn't have used that word, or that person genuinely wanted to manipulate them, right? And so when we're stepping outside, this is how subtle it can be. When we step outside of our comfort zone and things are feeling really new and different, or it could be as subtle as, oh, I don't really know, like, what I'm supposed to wear in this environment, or is it okay to talk about this thing? What are people going to think if I eat at this time or eat this particular food? Or it could be, is it okay for me to ask questions? It can be so subtle and yet so stimulating to the nervous system, right? And so let's go back to using me as an example of comparing myself to my coach. And the story that was playing out when my nervous system was reacting to the status or stage of my business versus where I wanted it to be versus where hers was at, right? And so some of what came up when I did the inner work, and obviously, if you've been here a while, I am enormous on walking the talk as a coach and being an embodiment of everything that I teach. And I talk about healing and growth as a lifestyle choice, not as a list of boxes that you tick and then get a certificate for, and then it sits on the wall and you're just perfect and healed and your work is done. And so, when I'm talking to my clients about inner child healing, likely that week or a couple of weeks earlier or the following week, I'll be doing inner child healing in the relationship with myself. Or if I'm guiding a woman on the specific prompt she can use to do self-inquiry journaling, chances are I've used, not even chances, I have used that self-inquiry journaling prompt myself many times and probably will in the future, because every time I go to another level, in terms of a goal, meaningful life vision, there is also another level of healing that reveals itself to me. And so here's what I found. I found that my nervous system was running off this story of, if I'm not perfect, I'm not paid attention or shown love. Yeah. And to the nervous system, if you're not paid attention and you're not shown love, you're going to be left alone forever. You're going to be rejected. You're going to be isolated. That means you're unsafe and that you're not going to be able to survive, right? And so that's the literal experience the nervous system is having in these instances, right? Something else that I found that was coming up, and these are all different iterations of the same thing, and essentially the programming that my inner child learned from her conditioning, from my primary caregivers, like different significant emotional events that we're all exposed to throughout childhood, was, I have to get it right or I'll be rejected. If I don't get it right, I'll get in trouble. I'll be misunderstood. People won't like me. Yeah. As well as, it's not okay for me to make mistakes, or it's not, more so than that, it's not okay for people to see me making mistakes, right? Because then they're going to think I'm stupid, that I'm not smart enough. They'll laugh at me, they'll ridicule me, they won't like me, they'll talk about me behind my back. And like, just for the context too, I run an online business, right? Like this podcast episode I'm recording right now, it is like literally anybody can listen to this, and I have no idea who's listening to it. And then, judging me, misunderstanding me, making these stories up about me, thinking they know all about me and like what different, language and words and experiences mean to me. Same with Instagram, right? Like it is out there for the world. And so that's probably like the main piece that I've been working with, because it's more around well, the opposite of this obviously is like becoming more refined in letting people be wrong about me, letting people misunderstand me, like letting talk about me in all the ways that you think you know me. Yeah. Um, doing things, saying things that are going to clash with other people's values. Yeah. That'll probably trigger stuff in other people that they might not have the capacity to go in and look at in this way that I'm sharing with you here of like, there's probably something in your past that is unresolved as a memory, a trauma, an experience that is making you so upset about me sharing my opinion or sharing my gift and sharing my expertise, right? And so, when we go beneath the surface and realize, oh, okay, well, if these unresolved emotional events and traumas are here, it probably doesn't matter what time I work with a coach on this goal, it's going to come up. Yeah. It probably doesn't matter how many ducks are in a row, it's going to come up. It doesn't matter how strictly or how strategically I comb through all of my decisions and all of my choices in my current day world and look for the one that was wrong or not quite right so I can do it better next time or more perfectly, because it's not about your decisions and choices. Any decision or choice that moves you closer to your goal is going to trigger the exact same thing, right? Because it's here stored at a subconscious level, currently outside of your conscious awareness, in the subconscious, triggering the nervous system. And the nervous system, when we pay attention to that and when we have, somatic emotional release techniques for connecting with healing your inner child and strengthening your intuition and retrieving information and learning and seeking the intelligence of our subconscious, that's when these things get to start shifting and changing, right? If I just went into the world, my current day life and was like, well, I just need to be more perfect and I just need to make less mistakes. If I don't feel comfortable being seen in less mistakes, let's just make less of them, right? That's only going to perpetuate the problem because I'm running the same pattern of it's not safe for me to make mistakes. It's not safe for me to change my mind. It's not safe for me to be the beginner or the learner. It's not safe for me to seem awkward. It's not safe for me to be wrong about something because I'm not an expert at it yet, right? And that doesn't heal the pattern that is creating this feeling of like fear and stress and the need, like the life or death survival mode that the nervous system is switching into, of fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Yeah. So instead, what I did is I showed up. I witnessed what was happening, right? And one of, the more healing and growth work you do, the more subtle it becomes. And so one of the greatest signs that there's something for me to look at these days is not actually necessarily anxiety or stress or, sometimes it will be a physical symptom like tiredness or, irritability, or often for me too, it'll be that like my work is just like, and life, but my work is like an easy one because we spend a lot of time in our work throughout the week. Things are feeling jammed up and they're just like not flowing and they're not as enjoyable and they're not as easy and creativity's gone missing, right? So these are some of those signs. And then there will be bigger ones too. So maybe I should do a full podcast episode on this as well. But, I shared over the last couple of months that I'd been experiencing a parasite and, I was detoxing that. And a huge, huge, huge part of my approach to that was understanding, like, what is my body asking me to look at here from an emotional perspective, from a self-expression and being more of the real me perspective. And it took a little bit for that information to come to the surface. And it wasn't one thing. There were at least 3 specific things that were, happening in the background, that I'd done enough healing in the past to be able to understand, to have surface, and that I have the sophistication in my emotional intelligence now to be able to work with, that I just wouldn't have been able to in the past, because there were like crisis pieces to my acceptance of myself and my confidence and expressing as the truth of who I am. Like, these foundational crisis pieces were being rejected in the past. And so this is another way I can explain to you that I deeply believe healing and growth is a lifestyle and a way of being, is that it evolves. Like, it looks so different throughout the different stages of life. When I was chronically unwell with chronic fatigue, anxiety, depression, gut issues, hormone issues, heart issues, all of that plus more, that was a crisis mode of like, okay, we need to like really look at the fundamental base entry level of who am I when I'm like letting myself be me, as opposed to trying to fit into a box or play a role that other people would like me to play, that society has taught me, that has been modeled to me by my primary caregivers, that I know pleases other people and is accepted and conforms and has me feeling like I'm accepted and part of the masses and part of the majority. But actually, does that feel like freedom to me? Does that feel like truth to me? Or do I feel like I'm playing a role and that I'm having to like play a character and dress a certain way or have certain opinions or live by certain values that actually are not true for me? And so the process of healing, that just becomes even more and more and more refined over time. And so, this leaning into another level, another devil, I've been seeing it for what it is. I've been seeing it as, okay, I've now got access to even deeper healing in my subconscious and in my nervous system. And when I step out of my comfort zone, it's normal that that happens. It's actually so normal that my nervous system is going to want some support in coping with, we've never been here before. We don't know how this goes. You're putting a lot on the line to create this. It better fucking work, right? Because that's what happens when we step into the unknown and we step into uncertainty, when we go after goals that reflect things that never in our entire lifetime have we created that exact evidence that we know how to do it, or we know how to get it, or that it's definitely going to be a good idea and it's going to be worth it, right? And so I mentioned already, some self-inquiry journaling, inner child healing, somatic emotional release techniques. All of this formed a lot of the approach of how I was able to observe what was happening and then shift it and move beyond it and be sitting here like able to teach this stuff, right? Because I'm not bunkered down in it. I'm not feeling trapped in it. I'm not feeling stuck in it. It's like, oh, okay, cool. Here's what's actually happening, and here's what I can do about it. And now I've done it. And so now things are shifting and changing. Which a big part of that too is analyzing, after the self-inquiry journaling and after the inner child healing and after the somatic release techniques, is actually analyzing the data. So the subconscious patterns, those unprocessed memories or traumas, like, what are the imprints from that, which we can call data collection, that have been revealed, that we now know about? Yeah. And what are the practical steps forward I need to take that are the opposite to continuing to relive those patterns? Yeah. But we can only do those practical step pieces when we've allowed the nervous system to be part of the process, rather than like almost holding it hostage and being like, hurry the fuck up. Like, why are we not here yet? This is so annoying. Like forcing, bullying, pushing, the opposite of being able to have patience and compassion for ourselves whilst we're navigating hard things, whilst we're going to that next epic level, right? And I share this with you, my love, because I want you to know that if you want to live an insanely amazing life that lights you up inside and you just feel like you're tapped into your purpose for being here and you're surrounded by people that understand you and that value you and celebrate you and uplift you, and that when you speak, you feel understood and respected, and that amazing opportunities cross your path, and life just gets better and better and better, then the chances are that you have a value by the name of growth. Yeah. And when you step out of your comfort zone to activate that next level where there will be little, gremlins or devils, that's what it feels like to be looked at. You are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. This is growth, right? And if you've never had it before, the goal you're wanting to lean into, if you've never had it before, if it is a new building block to go on top of or beside one that you've already created, that's still something you haven't had before, right? So it's not like I'm starting a business in a different industry or a product business instead of a service business. It's the same business, but it's a different iteration or a different level in this business that I've never created before in this way or in any way. And so part of it is like really deeply acknowledging that and giving yourself a break a lot of the time. And there's so much deconditioning to be done around this idea that feeling emotions is time consuming, it slows you down, it takes too much energy, because the fucking opposite is true. I cannot tell you how much easier it becomes to just coast towards my goals when I respect the nervous system. When I do the emotional intelligence work, things happen so much more quickly. Energy returns to the body. Yeah. I spoke briefly before about this parasite that I was experiencing. When I found those emotional pieces, so quickly all of the symptoms resolved, right? And we can have so much love and compassion for ourselves whilst we're figuring that out. It doesn't have to be now and fast. And if it's not done tomorrow, then I'm not smart enough and I'm not good enough and I should be better at it. And it should look more perfect and clean and polished and easier than this, right? The more we actually embrace, oh, fuck, this feels shit. I'm in the mess, like I'm in the mud, the less time we actually spend in the mess and the mud, right? So I hope this conversation's been really useful. If comparison is something you're experiencing, come and share with me in my DMs on Instagram. I'd love to hear where it's showing up for you right now, or send me an email. I spoke at the start of this episode actually about how this is the style of like teaching I do on my mailing list. If you're not on my mailing list and you want to join, you can send me an email with your email address that you would like added to gemma@gemmahanley.com, or send me a DM. Yeah, my handle on Instagram is @GemmaEHanley. Okay, beautiful woman. I'll be back next week to chat more things: personal expansion, confidence, calmness in your nervous system, and feeling more peaceful with the truth of who you are. Big love.
Thank you for being here for this conversation, my love. If you would like more free resources, if you'd like to learn about my programs or coaching opportunities, you can find all of that information at my website, gemmahanley.com. I'll link it below in the show notes. And if you would like to connect daily, head over and find me on Instagram. My handle there is Gemma E. Hanley, and I reply to all of my DMs there personally. If you enjoyed this episode and found it valuable, please share it with someone. You never know who needs to hear one little thing to take their day from feeling stuck and heavy to light and free. See you on the next one.